Hey, quick question. Do you like your energy bill? Me either. So since pretty much everything runs on energy, this might seem like a pretty inescapable fact of life. But by the end of this video, you're going to understand how solar power is going to lower your bills and change the world. So let's get into it. As you might imagine, solar energy has been around for as long as we have orbited the sun. But now we have battery technology and solar panels, which allow us to absorb and save that energy for later. This gradual optimization has already ranked solar as a more efficient energy source than coal. And to top it off, the industry already employs more people and in a safer way. Unfortunately, there are barriers in the way preventing wide-scale adoption. But across the world, we're seeing some really positive trends and some revolutionary advancements. When you think of solar power today, an image of bulky picture frames on the roof or acres of shiny blue metal might come to mind. This is just the surface of the solar tech industry, because most innovations in this space are going to occur in our electrical grid, where we will be optimizing it for renewables. What is the grid, you may ask? Well, it's the platform in which we transfer energy to each other. And it also just happens to be one of the most complex and largest machines humanity has ever built. Upgrading the grid is a crucial first step when implementing solar power to scale. Currently, solar only contributes 2% to our entire electrical grid. But ironically, if any more was added in, we would see a variety of issues occur. When additional inputs are added into the grid, like solar or other renewables, there's the chance of them overloading the grid. And in some cases, they may not even be able to provide enough energy to meet the demand. There is one thing our current grid does accomplish, it's that it delivers energy and offers a lot of redundancy, which makes sure that we always have energy whenever we need it. Fossil fuel power plants are on at all hours of the day. This is because 1, it saves them energy, and 2, because our current alternative energy sources are unreliable and managed inefficiently. This issue is best described by the blue line that represents the average amount of energy people demand at certain times of the day, while the orange line represents energy produced from solar. As you might have noticed, the solar line is increasing the most at the same time of the day the fossil fuel line does. That's because energy demand increases throughout the day as people wake up or get off work. Those are also the hours the sun offers the most energy, and sometimes too much for our current electrical grid. Since we don't have many energy storage options and we can't depend on sunny days every day, this creates the need for power plants to be on all the time to meet the daily demand. The current electrical grid depends on predictable supply and demand, which is why it's not adaptable enough to reliably provide energy from numerous energy sources. It needs to be upgraded, or else we will continue to burn dirty fossil fuels and further pollute the environment. In the future, it's expected that solar energy will become much more widespread throughout the world. And in order to manage all of those new inputs, these 3 strategies will likely be used. Microgrids will be established within communities in order to provide targeted energy needs and to house giant batteries to store energy collected more locally. The majority of energy production is centralized and comes from enormous power plants on the outskirts of cities. This is very inefficient because on average in the US, we lose about 60% of that energy in raw materials during transmission. So in short, the further energy has to travel, the more energy is lost. And going forward, we may see that problem fixed by generating energy within our own neighborhoods. Although batteries have come a long way, certain parts of the country will begin to incorporate their geography as a way of storing energy. Techniques like gravity storage, where surplus energy is used to pump water up a hill when the supply is high, and letting it fall down to spin a turbine as the demand is high. You can think of this as a small-scale hydroelectric dam that manipulates its water more freely. This will work out best in communities near a lake or in the mountains, and drastically increase the potential for how cities are powered. This, among other water-based storage options, will become much more prevalent over time because they often produce near zero emissions, which is ultimately the main reason for optimizing the grid, and it's something we're going to need if we're going to have a sustainable world in the future. As energy production gets cheaper over time, it will incentivize the sharing of energy with your neighbors, which could mean you. If your house already uses solar, let me know down in the comments section and tell me how it's treated you so far. Comments pandering aside, historically, power companies have monopolized our grids because they needed to profit off the production process and maintenance fees for investors. But as more citizens become their own power company, energy will no longer follow one direction from the power plant to you, but instead will travel more fluidly. That way, when one person produces more than they need, they can add it back into the grid and share it with their neighbors or those close to them. This also offers many opportunities for homeowners or even people within a shared communal space to actually produce more solar than they need and sell it to the market if sharing isn't your cup of tea. Now I know you might be thinking, this video is supposed to be about the future of solar, so why are we talking about the grid? Well, that's a great question, but the fact of the matter is, without an advanced grid, we have very little hope of incorporating more solar into our lives. We've gone over the future advancements of the grid, but we haven't discussed what the actual industry will look like and what that means for you. So as the grid continues to advance over time, this is going to invite corporations to become more dependent on renewable energy. That's because every product that we purchase, every type of food that we grow, has a fixed cost. It is the amount of energy it takes to power the process, to deliver the product, even sometimes to just scan the product over to you. This is a huge limitation to the possibilities a company could provide, but it's also a huge deterrent to the things that we want in our lives. It makes things more expensive. And by having a cheaper and cleaner energy enveloped into our society, we would see scarcity potentially go away over time. Some examples that this is already happening can be seen in companies like Amazon, Walmart, Microsoft, you name it. So many companies have been trying to hop on the bandwagon, primarily for PR, but also because they know that if they aren't producing their products with the cheapest amount of energy, then they aren't going to be competitive in the future. So they're purposely investing in EVs and solar panels on their commercial real estate because they know in the long run, they will come out on top. And for the consumer, this is actually going to make all of the things that we purchase more affordable. But affordability aside, we need to acknowledge that 100 companies in the world are actually responsible for the vast majority of the emissions, meaning that they are selling us products, but they aren't paying for the externalities and the damage they're causing to our future. So in a way, corporations are still corporations in this future with solar panels saturating society, but they're doing it in a way that will harm us less and will possibly provide the things that we want in more abundance. Residential solar is going to be the next area of huge growth in the future, and that can already be seen now. The industry is growing rapidly too for homes, and it makes sense because a lot of the energy that we consume is right under our own roof. So why don't we provide for ourselves, right? The cool thing about having energy from your own home is that it offers you more freedom. You become your own power company, and that will be something that people want in the future. They already want it, but as it becomes more accessible from the price point and from the practicality of it when it comes to deploying it into the grid, and possibly becoming your own utility, selling energy to other people or sharing it with neighbors. Really, the options are unlimited because when you think about all of the energy that comes from the sun, we could power all of civilization in the world for a year just off of one day's worth of solar. The problem is we can't absorb all of it at once, but maybe one day. Like I said, as the cost comes down, we're going to see rapid adoption. And the really great thing is that it's expected to continue to fall as more advancements occur over time. And as solar power is more ingrained and incorporated into the way we run our cities, we will likely begin to see legislation trying to incentivize homes and structures that are retrofitted for solar power. Some examples of this would be homes built facing the south, because that is where the majority of the sun is facing. If we could incentivize home builders to make the southern part of their roofs flat and very accessible for solar panels, this would rapidly increase the rate of adoption. Because that is another problem with the current day, is that houses were not designed for solar. They have funny, pointy roofs, and that's fine if that's your style. But personally, I like to have free energy because that would make life much, much easier and much cheaper. And solar power doesn't necessarily mean solar panel, battery. It can also actually just use the natural lighting. For instance, if a home was to have skylights, you would save an immense amount of energy every year just from not having to turn on the light switch every day during the day. And if you were to have homes with white shingles, that means that you wouldn't absorb so much heat during the summer, and you could turn down your AC, thus saving even more energy. Ultimately, residential solar will become an extremely important pillar to how our societies become renewable, because that is where we live, that is where most of our energy is consumed, and if we can fix that problem on that localized level, it would enormously reduce our emissions and possibly add more freedom into our life via less bills. So that is the future of solar energy. Although there is so much more to discuss, and I will be sure to touch on that in the very near future, if you feel like this video offered any value to you, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and the algorithm. The takeaway from this video is that although the grid is one of our huge barriers, the distribution and coordination of our energy is actually our main issue. So rethinking how we do that and what our priorities are when it comes to powering our society is how we might get to a better place. So thanks for watching Type 1 Orbiter. I hope to see you again soon.